Hey there, and welcome back to the Empowered Edge, where we unlock your best self through optimal health, a resilient mindset, and lasting habits. I'm your host, Jenna Hostetler, and today we are tackling something that is absolutely foundational to achieving any goal: habits. More specifically, we're going to talk about what it really takes to build habits that stick. About 4 years ago, I noticed that my brain was creating habits without me initiating it. My brain, like most, loves routine, so it doesn't take much repetition for me to form habits. And I first recognized this when I would get into bed after a long, usually boring day at a job that I slowly grew to dread, and I would get on my iPad and do a puzzle or a coloring app once I was all settled in and cozy. And after about 3 nights, I didn't even really need to think about it anymore. It just kind of became second nature, and I would get this feeling that it's just what I needed to be doing. And it wasn't intentional, but there it was. A habit formed without my permission, without my intention. And that's when I realized that if my brain can create habits on autopilot, then I can absolutely train it to create habits that serve me and support my goals. And that is exactly what we're going to be talking about today. I've used this framework that I'm going to teach you today to intentionally create little habits that allow me to be more productive and use less brain power throughout the day, and it is a game changer. So I'm really excited to share it with you. And if you try to create habits in the past and they never stick, chances are you are working on the wrong goal. And if you're working on the wrong goal, then no habit will stick. And even if it does, it doesn't really matter because it's not going to get you where you want to go. So go ahead and go down to the show notes and grab my free guide, Goal Getter, a 3-step process to identify, commit to, and take action on the one health goal that changes everything. It is designed to set you up with the clarity and direction that you need to create habits that stick, and it is pretty fantastic. So all right, let's go ahead and dive in. So why do most people fail when trying to build new habits? Well, in my experience, it's because we get caught up in the all or nothing trap. Most people fail at building productive habits because they try to change everything at once. And you know how it goes. You get really excited about a new goal or new plan or new method, and you decide to overhaul your entire life. All of a sudden, you're working out 5 days a week, you're meal prepping, you're eliminating sugar and bread, you're drinking a gallon of water, and you're getting up at 5 a.m., which sounds great, right? Except by day 3, you're overwhelmed. By day 5, you're like, oh, this really isn't fun. And by day 7, it's over. You're back to square one, feeling defeated, disappointed, and thinking, why did I think I could do this? We end up giving up before we really had a chance to start because we thought we could run the marathon with the pros without training for it. Here's the thing that most people forget. Habits generally don't stick when they feel like a chore. Our brain's job is to keep us comfortable. So if you're working on a goal that does not show immediate results and it's something you'd rather not do, your brain will come up with all of the reasons and all the ridiculous excuses it can to not do it. Now, this doesn't mean that every habit you create has to be fun, but trying to do too much too soon makes everything feel like a chore and your brain will avoid it. So what's the solution? We have to start small. You've probably heard this before, and I know it might sound boring or like it's not enough, but trust me, it is the most effective way to build habits that really last. When you start small, you build momentum, and it's that momentum that carries you forward. And it's not because you can't handle more, it's because starting small builds trust with yourself, and trust is the foundation for everything else. And here's a truth that you might not want to hear. How you do one thing is how you do everything. If you're not following through on the small things, you cannot be expected to follow through on the big things. And I never really believed this until just a few years ago because I always thought that I followed through on the things that mattered, the things that were important. So if I didn't follow through, it obviously wasn't important and therefore it didn't matter. But I finally understood this concept of if you can't be trusted with the little stuff, you'll never be trusted with the big stuff when I was watching a show about the Freemasons. And they said that one of the first tests when someone joins was teaching them a secret handshake and seeing if they kept it a secret. Now, whether this is true or not is totally irrelevant. But when I first heard this, I thought, well, that's stupid. A handshake doesn't really matter. It's the big stuff that matters. And then that's when it hit me, is that it is not the new member's job to decide what he thinks is important or not. It's his job to do what he's told, even if he doesn't understand why. And if he takes the liberty of choosing when he follows the rules, he is a danger to the entire organization. And the same thing is true with goals. Remember, it's your brain's job to keep you comfortable. And if you commit to doing a 10-minute Pilates workout every morning, and then one day you come up with a reason why it's okay that you don't, you just broke trust with yourself. And just like that new member broke trust with the organization. And when you do it once, it's easy to do it again. And before you know it, you are constantly justifying why it's okay that the daily Pilates workout happens maybe 4 times a week, and you don't even realize how off track you are because it's so easy to tell yourself it's okay that you didn't keep your word. And this is when I recognized in myself when I would lie to myself about it being okay that I didn't follow through on my commitments. I see this all the time with people's eating habits. Someone will say that they're staying away from sugar. Then they end up at a cookout with 4 different desserts available, and for some reason, they've convinced themselves that the commitment they made suddenly doesn't apply. It's almost like you're only serious about the commitment as long as you're in your controlled environment and temptation doesn't exist. So then they have the dessert without thinking twice about it, and then wonder why they can't lose weight. Now, I'm not saying that you have to be perfect, because no one is, and to expect that you or I will ever be is setting us up for failure. But if you can accept that hitting any big goal starts with building trust with yourself, that you can and will follow through, then you'll never hit that big goal and you'll be frustrated every single day of your life. This skill is the basic foundation of hitting any goals, and that is why you need to grab that guide in the show notes before this is over. So now that you know that most habits don't stick because people start off committing to too much and they underestimate the effectiveness of mastering one little thing at a time, let's get into how to build habits that last and move you closer to your big goal. Step 1. Connecting your habit to your vision. This is crucial. If your habit feels like a burden that's disconnected from your bigger goal, that vision that you have for your life, it's not going to stick. Let's say that your goal is to get off metformin. So your first step is to create a habit of meal prepping so you can stick to a meal plan that will lower your blood sugar. Now that's a fine goal, but it's not very exciting. It's not very emotionally charged, which means it'll be very easy to tell yourself that you had a crazy busy week and you deserve a break. So it's okay if you don't go to the grocery store on Saturday so that you can meal prep on Sunday. Now what just happened there? The habit you were trying to build of grocery shopping on Saturday is not fun and it's not enjoyable, so your brain just found an excuse for why it's okay that you don't do it. Your brain is trying to keep you comfortable, and it is so much easier to do this if you do not have a really strong emotional connection to your goal and how it will impact your life. If you allow your brain to throw you off track once, it becomes easier to do it a second time, and you will be very annoyed with yourself come Tuesday when it takes 3 times the effort to eat an on-plan meal because you did not prep over the weekend like you meant to. If we're creating habits that lead to the life we want to create, then we need to expand the vision and reduce the habit so we can be excited and emotionally attached to the habit that we're creating. So what does this look like? Well, I want to get off metformin becomes I want to live a life without disease and without the need for medication so that I'm not bound by the restrictions diabetes will put on me, and I want to be in control of my life instead of having a disease dictate what I can do. Now that is a much more expansive, exciting goal and will keep you motivated to follow through on whatever habit you're working to build. Then we look at the habit. I'm going to meal prep so I can stick to my meal plan. Now to me, that feels like someone gave me this meal plan or told me to follow it, so now I have to meal prep so I can do what they said. And maybe that's just me. I don't think I've ever actually referred to how I eat as a meal plan. It's just what I'm choosing to eat. But if we were to reduce this habit to its smallest elements to understand what we're really doing, it might sound something like this. I have the ability and the means to choose exactly what I eat, which means I get to go to the grocery, pick my own food, and prepare for my entire week so that I can stay on track with the goal that's most important to me right now. And even on my busiest days, sticking to a diet that will free me from medication gets to be easy. I don't know about you, but that gets me excited for anyone trying to lower their blood sugar with diet. And this is something you can do with any goal, even something as simple as, I'm going to do laundry every Monday. Expand the vision, the big goal of what you want your life to be, and tie your habit to it by reducing it down to what it's really doing for you. Step 2, start small. I know I've mentioned this earlier, but it is so important that I'm going to say it again. Start small. Pick one habit that supports your larger goal and make it as simple as possible. If you know you sit too much and you need to start building muscle, it's okay to start with a 5-minute Pilates workout every day. Maybe by day 4 you've increased it to 10 minutes, and maybe by week 2 you're doing a steady 15 minutes every day, and you maintain that for years. You just up the intensity. It's very easy to underestimate the effectiveness of starting out small. And when we get the idea that if it's not a 30-minute workout that has us dripping in sweat, then it's not even worth our time, we're back to the all or nothing thinking that we know doesn't work. All or nothing thinking is another tactic that our brain uses to tell us that our small efforts won't matter, so we might as well just do nothing, sending us back into that comfort zone, which, newsflash, does not change your life. Is a 5-minute daily workout going to have you building muscle, raising your metabolism, and losing weight? No, absolutely not. But that's not the point. The point is to start and to build consistency so that when you do advance to bigger goals, you have the foundation to follow through. Remember, we have to train for the marathon. We can't just sign up and expect to be successful. Step 3, create a trigger or a cue. Our brain loves routines. I mentioned this in the beginning when I was talking about my habits. If you want to build a new habit, a good way to start is to attach it to something you already do. For example, if you want to start a morning workout, do it right before you make your coffee. If you want to start stretching, do it right before bed. Having cues makes it easier for our brain to remember the habit, which makes it easier to build the muscle of consistency. If you're trying to start a habit that's undoing a bad habit, it's more effective to change up the whole routine so you don't feel tempted to revert to old habits. So if you always take a walk on your lunch break and you just happen to walk into Dunkin' Donuts every time, don't put yourself in the situation of trying to avoid Dunkin' Donuts. Either walk a different route or do something totally different altogether, and when you no longer have the desire for an afternoon donut and you can trust yourself, you can walk your old path and know that you will not fall into temptation. Step 4, make it easy to succeed. What is one thing that's making your new habit harder to stick to? Is it that you're too tired in the morning to work out? Is it that you don't have healthy, ready-to-eat food on hand, so you just grab whatever's easiest? Whatever it is, remove the barrier. Make it as easy as possible to succeed, because the less you have to think about it, the fewer decisions you have to make, the less your brain will resist and the more likely you are to stick with it. This is why anybody who has an ounce of success lives by their calendar. When you put things into your calendar and you don't have to think about what to do for the day, you don't have to think about what to do next, you don't have to decide what you should do after work, it is so much easier to stick with your habits and maintain your commitments because you're relieving your brain of the burden of decision, especially if you have a busy life and the last thing you want to do is make another decision. This is also why objectively evaluating your progress is crucial. If you don't recognize why something isn't working, you cannot make the necessary adjustments so that you can be successful. It's as simple as that. No one expects you to be perfect or to do it right the first time, so take the pressure off yourself. And when you don't follow through, I say when, because like it or not, it's going to happen. When you don't follow through, find the problem, make adjustments, and move on. Step 5, hold yourself accountable. Accountability is everything. When you're accountable to someone, whether it's a friend, a coach, or even just a habit tracker, you are far more likely to follow through. And let me be clear, accountability does not mean beating yourself up if you mess up. It means holding yourself to a higher standard because you know what you're capable of and you know what kind of life you want. No one is making you do this. You are choosing to have the goals because you want more out of your life. And there's nothing wrong with that. Chances are you're working on the same goals that you made 5, 10, or 20 years ago because you cannot let it go because it's so important to you. So do yourself a favor and figure out what kind of accountability works for you and get started with it. Step 6, track your progress. This doesn't have to be complicated. Whether you use a habit tracker app, a journal, or even just a checklist, tracking your progress does 2 things. First, it gives you proof that you're making changes. Second, it allows you to see how far you've come. Even on the tough days when you don't feel like it, seeing your progress keeps you going. It really does help. And sometimes seeing on paper that you haven't done something in 6 days in a row is the kick in the rear that you need to get back on track. I love visual trackers, and it really has me evaluating myself when I have a bunch of red X's because I did not do the thing I said I would do that day. I always have to say this when people are tracking food because it inevitably comes up. Your food log is not a reflection of who you are as a person. Writing down all the junk food you ate at the fair that day doesn't make you a failure. And not writing down all the junk food you ate at the fair that day doesn't mean you didn't eat it. Tracking anything is simply about collecting information, and if you're not truthful about what you're doing, then you can't adjust as needed and you will not make the progress that you want. Being in denial about the facts doesn't change the facts. And finally, the last step in creating habits to stick is reflecting on your progress. This is similar to tracking, except when we reflect on our progress, we're only focusing on what's working. Even if it's hard to identify something that's working, the fact that you're taking the time to write about it is worth acknowledging. If there's anything I want you to take away from today, it's remembering that your brain's job is to keep you comfortable. It'll lie to you, it'll trick you, it'll sabotage you. And one way to get it to stop doing that is to tell your brain that what you're doing is working. We all know it's easier to do something when we have an immediate result. And unfortunately, the most exciting and the most rewarding goals often take the longest to see meaningful results. And chances are you will go backwards many times before you get there. So if you're working on something that is pretty difficult for you, physically or mentally, you have to show your brain that the effort is worth it so it allows you to keep moving forward. At the end of each week, if not every day, ask yourself, what's working? What did I accomplish? What can I acknowledge myself for? Even if it's as simple as, despite the awful week, I'm not giving up, and that in itself shows that I'm becoming the person I want to be. Doing this exercise regularly is a game changer for building habits that last. So let's wrap this up. I know we talked about a lot today, and I gave you 6 steps of things to do, so remember rule number 1, all or nothing doesn't work. If it takes a month of trial and error to figure out your vision so that you can finally get yourself to not stop at Starbucks every day and enjoy a real coffee that's just coffee, that's okay. Start small. Give yourself grace as you figure it out, and keep tweaking until you get it into a good groove that works for you. So what is one habit that you're going to start working on today? Remember, it doesn't have to be huge. Pick something small that supports your goals and go from there. Small steps build momentum, strengthen trust in yourself, and create the foundation for bigger goals. Consistency over intensity wins every time. To take these habits to the next level, I'm going to say it one more time, download Goal Getter from the show notes and get crystal clear on the health goal that will truly change your life and fast track your way towards implementing everything that we discussed today. Whatever you decide to do, commit to it. How you do one thing is how you do everything. Start small, build momentum, and hold yourself accountable. That is the formula for building habits that last. That's all for today. Take action, stay empowered, and I'll see you next time.